In rural Georgia, a monument stood for decades, puzzling visitors and sparking debate. Known as America's Stonehenge, the Georgia Guidestones were mysterious and controversial, with their cryptic inscriptions written in multiple languages. The guidelines etched into stone fueled conspiracy theories for decades, until one day the monument was destroyed in a targeted explosion in 2022. But who wanted them gone and why? These guidestones weren't just mysterious for their inscriptions, they were also commissioned under a pseudonym, R.C. Christian, adding to the intrigue. While some viewed the monument as a harmless representation of philosophical ideals, others saw it as a nefarious blueprint for a new world order with hidden, darker messages. The question is, who would go so far as to destroy it? Law enforcement agencies have treated the destruction as vandalism, but the truth behind the attack remains elusive. Footage of the explosion showed a coordinated and intentional act, yet the responsible party identified, and theories abound as to why the Guidestones were specifically targeted at this moment in history. Was the destruction of the Georgia Guidestones a random act of vandalism? Or is there a deeper, more sinister motive at play? Stick with us as we explore the layers of mystery behind this controversial monument and why someone would want it gone. The Georgia Guidestones were erected in 1980 in Elbert County, Georgia, by a man going by the name R.C. Christian, a pseudonym that immediately piqued public curiosity. The mysterious man claimed to represent a small group of loyal Americans who wanted to leave a message for future generations. While some believed the stones were a harmless project funded by private citizens, the monument's content raised eyebrows. The first inscription was especially controversial: maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Critics saw this as a call for mass population control, while others interpreted it as a warning about overpopulation and environmental collapse. Despite numerous attempts to uncover the true identity of R.C. Christian, no definitive information has ever surfaced. Investigators and reporters have failed to trace the funding for the project, and those involved in the construction have maintained secrecy about their client. This lack of transparency has fueled speculation about who really wanted the monument built and why. Who was R.C. Christian, and what was his true purpose in creating the Georgia Guidestones? Were they meant to be a warning for humanity or a sinister manifesto for global elites? On July 6, 2022, the Georgia Guidestones were reduced to rubble after a targeted explosion. Security footage captured the incident, but what it didn't capture were the people responsible. The destruction was sudden, violent, and precise, leaving the world to wonder who wanted the Guidestones gone and why now. Many believe that the timing of the explosion was significant. Some claim it coincides with rising political extremism in the United States, particularly among groups that saw the Guidestones as a representation of globalist and satanic ideologies. These groups, aligned with fringe elements of the far right, viewed the monument as a threat to traditional values and took matters into their own hands. While law enforcement continues to investigate the destruction, some have suggested that the act was an inside job. There are those who believe that the stones were destroyed by the very elites who funded them, possibly to erase evidence of the messages they once stood for. Others claim that the destruction was part of a larger ritual, a message to global elites. Was the destruction of the Georgia Guidestones a spontaneous act of vandalism, or was it a well-orchestrated attack meant to send a message? What secrets did the monument hold that someone wanted to silence forever? Throughout history, monuments have been destroyed for political and ideological reasons. The Georgia Guidestones aren't the first, and likely won't be the last, to be targeted in such a way. What makes their destruction stand out is the timing and the secrecy around it. In the past, the destruction of monuments has often been a symbolic act, reflecting deep societal divides or signaling the downfall of political powers. The destruction of statues, temples, and political symbols is often done to send a message, much like what some believe happened with the Georgia Guidestones. Just like in many of these cases, the destruction of the Georgia Guidestones has left a void, but also a louder echo of its message. For some, it has intensified the mystery, while for others, it has brought an end to what they viewed as a dangerous symbol. Could the destruction of the Georgia Guidestones be seen as part of a larger historical pattern of toppling symbols that challenge established norms or ideologies? And if so, what does this destruction tell us about the state of society today? Whenever a high-profile incident like this occurs, it's important to ask, who benefits? The destruction of the Guidestones, whether carried out by extremists or by those in power, raises the question of who had the most to gain from erasing the messages etched into the monument. Some theorists believe that those who opposed the ideals of the Guidestones, whether due to religious, political, or ideological reasons, felt empowered by their destruction. In their eyes, this was a symbolic act of resistance against the perceived overreach of global powers. Meanwhile, others argue that those behind the stones may have wanted them gone to avoid further public scrutiny as attention grew. Law enforcement has not ruled out any potential motives, but as of now, no group has claimed responsibility for the destruction. The anonymity surrounding the act has only fueled speculation that more powerful, unseen forces were at play. Could the destruction of the Georgia Guidestones be a turning point in a larger hidden conflict between those seeking control and those fighting against it? Who stands to gain the most from their disappearance? The Georgia Guidestones became a flashpoint in the culture wars, particularly in the years leading up to their destruction. Political and ideological polarization had reached new heights, and many viewed the Guidestones as a symbol of everything they opposed. The question remains, was this an act of defiance by extremists who saw the monument as a threat to their beliefs? Far-right groups and conspiracy theorists had long viewed the Guidestones as a symbol of globalist and satanic agenda. For them, the destruction of the monument represented a symbolic victory against what they saw as an encroaching global power structure. Some believed that the destruction was celebrated within these circles as a blow against a new world order. However, some believed that this act of destruction could have larger implications for political and social discourse in the US. Could the destruction of the Guidestones be a reflection of broader social unrest and rising extremism in America? Could the destruction of the Georgia Guidestones be a signal of more to come? Is it a reflection of the growing divide in the US? And what does this act of extremism say about the state of society today? While the Georgia Guidestones were often seen through the lens of conspiracy theories, some of the guidelines also advocated for environmental responsibility and living in harmony with nature. The call to balance humanity with nature has even been interpreted as an early warning about the environmental crises we face today. Environmentalists argue that the inscriptions advocating for conservation and living within nature's limits were a necessary, if controversial, message. With climate change, overpopulation and resource depletion threatening future generations, could the stones have been offering a roadmap for a more sustainable future? Despite the positive environmental message, critics argue that the call for population control could be seen as a justification for eugenics or extreme measures. Others point out that the message may have been misunderstood or taken out of context, and that it was meant as a long-term vision for humanity's survival. Could the Georgia Guidestones have been ahead of their time, offering solutions for a sustainable future? Or was the environmental message overshadowed by the controversy surrounding population control? The destruction of the Georgia Guidestones marks the end of a physical monument, But the questions they left behind remain. Who built them? Why were they destroyed? And what does their disappearance mean for the future of the mysterious agendas they seem to represent? Law enforcement continues to search for answers, but without new leads, the case may remain unsolved. However, as with all mysteries, the absence of answers only deepens the intrigue, and the Guidestones will continue to inspire debate for years to come. The Georgia Guidestones may have fallen, but their message and the questions surrounding them will live on. Were they a warning, a prophecy, or something more? And what happens now that the stones and their cryptic message are gone? If you're fascinated by mysteries like this one and want to dive deeper into the world of unsolved conspiracies and unexplained events, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.